There are moments in life when the question rises inside your heart, if God loves me, why would he allow people to wound me so deeply? The truth is, sometimes God permits the pain not because he wants to destroy you, but because he wants to develop you. Hurt is often the soil in which wisdom grows. You don't truly learn the depth of trust until trust has been broken. You don't fully understand the power of forgiveness until you've been wronged. Pain becomes a teacher, showing you lessons comfort could never deliver. Think of the times when someone's rejection left you questioning your worth. What if that rejection was really God's redirection? What if their leaving was the only way for you to step into something greater? Some people were never meant to stay in your life, but you would have never let them go unless God allowed their actions to push you away. The hurt you feel today may actually be heaven's way of moving you into alignment with tomorrow's purpose. Every scar tells a story. Scars are not signs of weakness. They are evidence of survival. They prove that what was meant to break you did not succeed. In fact, the very thing that hurt you has made you stronger, wiser, and more aware of who you are. God often allows pain to strip away illusions so you can see the truth. When people hurt you, you discover their character, but you also discover your own capacity to rise above bitterness and walk in grace. Yes, the process is painful. Yes, it feels unfair, but pain has a purpose. When you allow God to use what others meant for harm, he turns it into the very thing that equips you for your destiny. You will realize that their betrayal pushed you closer to your calling. Their rejection gave you room to grow. Their harsh words built a resilience in you that no comfort zone ever could. So instead of asking, why did they hurt me? Begin to ask, what is God teaching me through this? Because the hurt is not the end. It's preparation. One day you will look back and understand that the very wound you thought would destroy you was the wound that positioned you for greatness. Sometimes we look at the hurt people cause us and wonder why a loving God would allow it. But when you step back and see the bigger picture, you realize that pain has always been a classroom for the soul, a place where the deepest lessons are taught and the greatest growth takes place. Because if life were free of betrayal, rejection, and disappointment, you would never discover the strength that has been quietly hidden inside you, waiting for adversity to unlock it. You would never learn to lean on faith when every other foundation has crumbled. And you would never come to understand that the tears you shed are not wasted, but water, the soil of your future, preparing you for the harvest of wisdom, resilience, and destiny. And so when they walked away, it was not abandonment, but redirection. When they spoke against you, it was not to destroy you, but to reveal who they truly were and to free you from the weight of false loyalty. And when they hurt you, it was not because you were weak, but because you were chosen to carry an anointing that required deeper roots, stronger character, and a heart that knows how to forgive even when forgiveness feels impossible. For God allows certain wounds not to break you, but to build you, not to punish you, but to purify you. Because what hurts you also shapes you, chiseling away the parts of your life that cannot go with you into the next season. And every scar that you carry becomes a story, a testimony that whispers to others who are broken that survival is possible, that joy can rise out of ashes. That betrayal does not end your journey, but often marks the turning point where your true calling begins. And so rather than asking endlessly why they hurt you, begin to see how their actions set the stage for your transformation. How the rejection that crushed your spirit also freed your hands to receive something greater. How the nights you spent crying prepared you to appreciate the mornings filled with peace. Because God does not waste pain, he repurposes it, turning the very thing that was meant to stop you into the fuel that propels you forward. And one day you will look back and thank him for the doors that closed, the friendships that ended, the wounds that bled, because without them you would never have discovered the strength of your spirit, the clarity of your vision, or the depth of your faith. And though it hurt in the moment, though it broke you in ways you thought could never be repaired, it was all a divine setup for your healing. your restoration, and your rise into the person you were always meant to be. Do you want me to make 5 more of these 1,000-word single paragraph versions? Like a full series of 6, each exploring a different angle of the same theme. So you'll have a complete long motivational script ready for your channel? You said, explain 2 paragraphs in 1,000 words without heading, and mention ChatGPT said, there are seasons in life when pain comes not from strangers, but from the very people you trusted the most, and you find yourself asking why God would let them hurt you. But in that question lies the beginning of wisdom, because pain is not always a punishment. Sometimes it is preparation, and the very heartbreak that feels unbearable becomes the soil where strength, faith, and clarity grow. Because in the comfort of easy days, we rarely search deeply within ourselves. Yet in the furnace of suffering, we discover resilience we didn't know existed, faith that becomes unshakable, and a vision that becomes clearer than ever before. And so when people betray you, reject you, or speak against you, it does not mean you are abandoned. It means you are being redirected. Because some relationships are only meant for a chapter, not the whole book. And God in His wisdom allows them to wound you so that you will release what cannot go with you into your next season. And even though it feels cruel in the moment, the rejection you face is actually redirection. The betrayal you endure is purification, and the loss you grieve is transformation. Because without those sharp edges of pain, you would never break out of the shell of comfort that was holding you back from your greater purpose. And every scar you carry becomes a living testimony that survival is possible, that hope can be reborn, and that your story is not over just because others wrote you off. What once felt like devastation will one day be remembered as the turning point, because wounds do not last forever, but the lessons they teach endure. And when you allow God to work through your hurt, you realize that the tears you shed were watering seeds of strength. The silence you sat in was training you to hear His voice more clearly, and the loneliness you walked through was teaching you to depend on Him more than anyone else. And though at times you may think the pain was unfair, you will eventually see it was necessary. Because without it, you would not have gained the wisdom to discern real love from false promises. You would not have developed the courage to walk away from what no longer served you. And you would not have discovered the power of forgiveness that sets you free. And in that freedom, you rise stronger, wiser, and more compassionate, ready not only to live your own calling, but to inspire others who are hurting to see that their pain is not wasted. For what was meant to break you has only built you. What was meant to silence you has only given you a voice. And what was meant to stop you has only pushed you further into the destiny that was always waiting for you. There are times in life when the people you counted on the most become the very source of your deepest pain. And in those moments, you can't help but question why God would allow them to hurt you. But pain has always been one of life's greatest teachers, because it takes you where comfort cannot. It stretches you, it shapes you, and it strips away illusions you might have clung to for far too long. And though betrayal and rejection feel like weapons designed to crush your spirit, they are often instruments that clear your path so that you can walk into something greater. Because when someone leaves you, mocks you, or misunderstands you, it does not mark the end of your value, but the beginning of your transformation. And it is in the tears you cry, in the prayers you whisper through brokenness, that you begin to discover strength you never knew was inside you. Strength that rises not in spite of the hurt, but because of it. And as painful as it feels, sometimes God allows the breaking because He knows what He is building. And the cracks that others caused in your life become the very spaces where His light shines through, reminding you that your story is not over, that your identity is not defined by what they did, and that the wounds you carry are not the end, but the soil of a new beginning. When you look back, you begin to realize that the rejection you endured was actually protection, that the betrayal you suffered was in many ways a redirection, and that even the harshest words spoken against you were carving out space for your growth. Because there are people and situations that cannot go with you into the next chapter of your life. And if they had stayed, their presence would have limited your vision, weakened your faith, and kept you attached to what was never meant for your destiny. And so even though the pain feels unfair, it becomes a gift when you understand its purpose, because every scar you carry tells a story of survival, of endurance, and of a God who never abandoned you in the storm, but used the storm to show you who you really are. And that is why your tears are not wasted. Your brokenness is not meaningless, and your heartbreak is not the end. Because what they did to hurt you is being reshaped into what builds you, teaching you wisdom, fueling your compassion, and preparing you to live on a higher level of strength and clarity. And while you may never understand their choices, you can understand God's purpose, which is always to take what was meant for evil and turn it into something that works for your good. The day will come when you will look back and thank God not for the pain itself, but for the growth it produced. Because the nights you thought you would never survive have made you resilient. The loneliness you endured has made you whole. And the rejection that stung your heart has opened doors to relationships that are healthier, truer, and divinely aligned. And that is the mystery of why He allowed them to hurt you. Not to destroy your spirit, but to deepen it. Not to leave you empty, but to make you overflow with wisdom and strength. Because nothing they did can cancel what God has prepared for you. And if anything, their actions pushed you closer to it. And so instead of carrying bitterness, you begin to carry clarity. Instead of holding on to resentment, you begin to hold on to purpose. And as you rise above the pain, you realize that every wound has a lesson, every scar has a story, and every heartbreak has within it the seed of a new beginning. And though you would not have chosen this path, you will one day see that the hurt was a bridge, a painful but necessary bridge that carried you into the fullness of who you were always meant to become. There are seasons when life seems to cut the deepest, not from the blows of strangers, but from the hands of those you once trusted. And in those moments of betrayal or rejection, you wrestle with the question of why God would allow such hurt to enter your path. But pain has always been a strange yet powerful teacher, one that reshapes how you see yourself, how you see others, and how you see God's plan working in the background of your journey. And though the sting of broken promises or harsh words can feel unbearable, that very sting often becomes the spark that awakens you to truths you could never discover in comfort, truths about your strength, your worth, and your destiny. Because without the shaking of your foundation, you might never realize how deeply your roots are anchored. And without the storm, you might never discover that you were built to withstand winds you thought would destroy you. And so the hurt you feel is not wasted. It is permitted to strip away illusions, to remove what cannot go forward with you, and to show you that you are capable of rising beyond the limitations others tried to place on you. As painful as it is, there is a divine redirection hidden within the wounds others cause, because sometimes the very people who hurt you are unknowingly the ones who push you into the next season of your life. And rejection, as cruel as it feels, often serves as protection from places, relationships, and opportunities that would have drained you or limited your growth. And while it may seem unfair, the truth is that God will sometimes allow hurtful exits so that your hands are free to embrace what is better, healthier, and aligned with your purpose. Because if everyone who started with you could stay with you, you would never be stretched to grow, and you would never release the things that hold you back. And so the betrayal that broke your trust may have been the only way to free you from false loyalty. The criticism that wounded you may have been the only way to sharpen your discernment. And the silence of abandonment may have been the only way to teach you to lean fully on God's presence instead of depending on human approval. When you start to look back through the lens of growth, the picture changes, because you realize that scars are not marks of weakness, but proof of survival, that every tear was watering the seeds of strength, and that every moment of brokenness was laying the foundation for resilience. meant resilience. And while you may not yet fully see it, every painful season is shaping you into a vessel that can carry more wisdom, more compassion, and more power than you ever imagined. Because the lessons carved into your heart through hurt are the very lessons that prepare you to lead, to inspire, and to live with a depth of character you could never gain in shallow waters. And though you once asked why, you begin to ask what is God teaching me through this? What is He removing to protect me? What is He building inside of me? And in those questions, you find freedom, because the focus shifts from pain to purpose, from victimhood to victory, and from bitterness to clarity. And that clarity allows you to rise, to forgive, and to embrace the future without carrying the weight of resentment. In time, you will see that what once felt like devastation was actually transformation in disguise. That what you thought was the end of your story was only the beginning of a greater chapter. And that nothing done against you has the power to cancel what God has already written for you. Because every wound becomes a stepping stone, every heartbreak becomes a doorway, and every season of hurt becomes a bridge leading you into strength, wisdom, and destiny. And one day you will look back with gratitude, not for the pain itself, but for the way the pain prepared you, purified you, and positioned you for a life that is stronger, deeper, and more authentic. And you will stand not as someone defined by what was done to you, but as someone refined by what you endured, carrying scars that shine not as reminders of brokenness, but as evidence of survival, resilience, and divine purpose. And it is then that you will truly understand why God let them hurt you. It was never to destroy you, but to shape you into the person you were always meant to become. There are moments in life when the deepest wounds are not caused by random circumstances, but by the very people you trusted. And in those moments of pain, the natural question rises within you: why would God allow them to hurt me? But when you look at pain not only as a wound, but also as a teacher, you begin to understand that sometimes what breaks your heart is the very thing that builds your character. Because suffering has always been a strange classroom, one that shapes strength in places comfort never could. Comfort never could. One that reveals hidden courage you would not have discovered otherwise. And though betrayal feels like the end of safety, it is often the beginning of growth. Because pain shakes away illusions and forces you to see both people and yourself with greater clarity. And the very wound that feels unfair can be the one that awakens you to your deeper purpose. The reality is that not everyone who starts with you is meant to stay with you. And sometimes the only way you would have ever let go of unhealthy attachments is through the sting of hurt, because rejection, as painful as it feels, often serves as redirection. And when people walk away from you or misuse you, it is not a reflection of your lack of worth, but a reflection of their inability to walk with you into the season that is coming. And while you may grieve what you lost, you will later realize that God allowed it not to punish you, but to protect you. For there are doors that must close so others can open. There are friendships that must end so healthier ones can begin. And there are battles you must face alone so that you will know the power of leaning fully on divine strength rather than human support. As you begin to heal, the scars left behind become proof that you survived. And those scars are not signs of weakness, but signs of resilience. For every tear you shed watered seeds of wisdom, and every silent night you endured became training for the strength you carry now. And though it hurt, the lessons gained are irreplaceable, because pain has a way of refining your vision and teaching you discernment, showing you who truly values you and who never did. And it also teaches you about yourself. Your capacity to forgive, your ability to endure, and your power to rise from ashes stronger than before. And so instead of seeing yourself as broken, you begin to see yourself as rebuilt, not weaker but wiser, not crushed but refined. The beauty of pain is that it eventually shifts your perspective. Because when you stop asking why and start asking what, you discover that the hurt you faced had purpose all along. That what was designed to break you actually built you. that what was intended to silence you gave you a stronger voice, and that what was meant to trap you in bitterness released you into freedom. And this shift allows you to walk forward without resentment, carrying not the weight of betrayal, but the clarity of vision. And with this new perspective, you see that even though people's actions may have caused harm, God's hand has always been guiding, always turning what was meant for evil into something that works for your good. Something that moves you closer to the destiny written for you before you even face the storm. In time, you will look back and realize that what once felt like devastation was transformation in disguise. That the people who hurt you actually pushed you closer to purpose. That the nights you thought would never end built endurance that nothing else could. And that the emptiness left behind was only space for something greater to be placed within you. And though in the moment you thought their actions defined your worth, you will one day stand with unshakable confidence, knowing that no wound inflicted by others has the power to cancel what has already been spoken over your life. And you will rise not as a victim of hurt, but as a testimony of resilience, carrying scars that no longer represent pain, but represent survival, strength, and divine preparation for the life you were always meant to live. There are times when life delivers pain in the most unexpected ways, not through distant strangers, but through the very people you believed would protect you. And in those moments, the heart cries out, wondering why God would allow such wounds to be inflicted. Yet pain, as cruel as it feels, often serves as the tool that shapes the deepest parts of who we are. For while comfort may bring ease, it is in discomfort that strength is born. And while joy can keep us steady, it is sorrow that often teaches us to grow. And so the hurt that feels unbearable in the moment is not without purpose, because pain awakens you to truths that comfort could never reveal. And though you may not see it yet, the very breaking that wounds you can become the making of you, if you allow it to carve wisdom and resilience into your life. It is in betrayal and rejection that you begin to see the reality of who people are and the depth of who you are. Because rejection is not always a reflection of your worth, but often a redirection towards something greater. And betrayal is not always the end of your journey, but sometimes the painful push you needed to step into a new chapter. And while it may feel like loss, what actually happened was a divine rearranging of your path. Because there are people and situations that cannot travel with you into your future. And if they remained, they would only hinder your growth and limit your calling. And so though it hurts, you will one day see that their exit was necessary, that their harsh words or careless actions were part of the process that set you free from what was holding you back. And that what you thought was abandonment was in fact protection. Every wound you carry tells a story, and every scar is evidence that you endured. And while you may feel broken by the hurt of others, what you truly are is rebuilt, stronger and wiser than you were before. Because scars do not only mark pain, but also survival. And they remind you that what tried to defeat you did not succeed. And as you heal, you begin to understand that your tears were not wasted, but were watering seeds of character. Your silence was not emptiness, but a season of listening more closely to the still voice of God. And your loneliness was not abandonment, but training in dependence on something greater than human approval. And when you embrace this perspective, the pain loses its power to define you and instead becomes the force that refines you. As you walk through the process of healing, you begin to notice how pain changes your vision, how it allows you to discern truth from illusion, and how it sharpens your awareness of who truly values you. For hurt strips away false appearances and leaves only what is real. And though it stings, chiril, the revelation it brings is priceless, because it teaches you how to guard your heart without hardening it, how to forgive without forgetting the lesson, and how to love again without losing the wisdom you have gained. And this transformation becomes the foundation upon which your future is built. Sir, a future not marked by bitterness but by clarity, not overshadowed by resentment but illuminated by purpose, because pain did not destroy you. It redirected you toward toward the strength and authenticity that were always meant to define you. Eventually, the question of why begins to fade, replaced by the recognition of what, for you no longer focus on why they hurt you, but on what God is doing through it. And in that shift, you find freedom, because you see that every wound was a lesson, every betrayal a step of preparation, every rejection a clearing of space for better. And though you may not celebrate the pain itself, you begin to celebrate the growth that came from it, the resilience it built in you, and the testimony it gave you to share with others who are hurting. For your story becomes a light to someone else's darkness, and your scars become a reminder that survival is possible, that healing is real, and that no amount of human hurt can cancel the destiny God has placed within you. One day you will look back and understand that what felt like devastation was actually transformation, that the loss that left you broken was the very thing that made room for greater gain, and that the people who hurt you were never in control of your story, but were simply characters in a chapter designed to shape you for the future. And when that realization comes, you will rise with confidence, no longer carrying the weight of bitterness, but walking with the strength of purpose. And you will see that God never allowed the hurt to destroy you, but to prepare you, never allowed the pain to weaken you, but to strengthen you, and never allowed the betrayal to end you, but to push you into the destiny you were created to fulfill. And it is then that you will stand not as a victim of what was done to you, but as a testimony of resilience, courage, and divine purpose, carrying scars that no longer bleed but shine as proof that every wound has meaning, every trial has value, and every hurt can be transformed into the strength that carries you forward.